One of the greatest things you can do if you are a teacher, and if you are a prophet, you are a teacher, is to tell people about your experiences. Don't downplay your experiences in life. Don't downplay what God has allowed you to go through and come out of. You know, the reason why you've come out of those things is because God wants to use them through you to get his glory. And you'll be surprised at how many people you will be able to help because you told your story, because you used what God allowed you to go through to help somebody else. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to teach on the victim mentality. And I'm going to be throwing in a little bit of my own testimony about how God set me free from the spirit of offense and a victim mentality. So let's get to it. Hope everybody is doing well on this beautiful Tuesday. I don't usually do videos on Tuesday, but today I felt moved to get on here and do this teaching. Sometimes it's not easy, but one of the things the Spirit of God said to me some years ago was, if you're willing, you're able. And I know that's going to help somebody today. If you are willing, you're able. So here we go. So the subject today is the victim mentality. You know, I used to have that mentality. I used to live with it. And I lived with it so heavily that I became depressed. Um, the door of depression was opened up for me because I was drowning in sorrows. And I blamed everyone for everything that didn't go right in my life except myself. And that's what happens when people have uh, a victim mentality. They generally don't accept that their life is in their hands and that if they have to make good decisions. And at the end of the day, that's what helps them to continue to go forward. And that's what's going to help them to go to the next level. That's what's going to help them to have their best life is when they decide, because life is full of decisions, to just keep moving forward. You know, I couldn't help some of the things that were happening to me. Some of those things, they were just meant to happen. But what I could help was how I dealt with those things. Once again, life is full of decisions. And the decision that I was making was to crawl up into a ball and try to hide from everything. And it wasn't working. And so at some point, it, a door was opened for a spirit of depression to come in. And I remember at my lowest point having to go to a meeting with my youngest daughter's teacher. And I didn't know what she was talking about because my mind was somewhere else. I was in a daze. My mind was foggy. That's a sign of, depression. And I couldn't get into what she was talking about. I felt that bad. And I felt so sorry for myself. Nothing in my life seemed to be going right. I felt like I had nothing to offer anybody. That wasn't true, of course. It was all a lie. But that's how I felt. And that's what happens when you have a victim mentality. You live for how you feel. And of course, you know, if you're a wise person, you know that your feelings are fleeting. One minute you could feel one way, the next minute you could feel another. And once again, it all goes back to your decision making processes. What are you deciding to do? Because you could have lost everything on Monday, but you could get up on Tuesday morning and act like life is going to go on. Or you could stay in bed and say, I've just lost everything, so my life is over. And of course, your life isn't over because you're still here. You might have lost every material possession you had, but you still have your life. So you're still able to keep going on. You understand what I'm saying? So to have a victim mentality is a defeated way of thinking. And it causes you to take your mind off of God the Father and to put your mind on your circumstance. So it's very limiting to have that mentality. And like I said before, it makes you feel like you're worthless. So that's why it's dangerous. Um, and of course, if you start feeling like you're worthless, you start feeling suicidal. Oh, I shouldn't be here. All these things come into play, and all these things are spirits. They're spirits. So I dealt with all of that. Today, I have been set free from it by the grace of God. You heard me? By the grace of God, I've been set free from it. And one of the things that I'm going to be talking about today that you're going to be shocked to probably hear me say, because I don't know that I have ever heard anyone say this before, but did you know that unforgiveness is one of the greatest blockers to being set free from a victim mentality? Now, I sincerely hope that I did not lose a lot of people when I just said that the foundation of, or the biggest thing that generally prevents people from being healed when they have a victim mentality or that spirit is unforgiveness. Because a lot of people don't like that. That's a curse word to some people, is unforgiveness. He's like, oh, you don't know what they said. You don't know what they did. I don't need to know what they said. I don't need to know what they did. You don't need to know what was done to me. You don't need to know what was said to me. You just need to know that I've been set free. You just need to know that you need to be set free as well. Because if you keep holding on to what he said, what she said, and what they did, it is not going to do anything but push you deeper into a pit of despair. And the greatness that God has for you in this life, you're not going to attain it because you're too busy worrying about what somebody else has said and what somebody else has done. And their life is going to keep going on. Their life is going to keep going on. You might be stifled, but they're not going to be. They're going to keep living. And it's really sad when, and I've seen this and you've probably experienced it or you've seen it yourself, when people are upset with folks that have moved on. It's like you sitting around worrying about what they said and what they did to you, and they somewhere living their best life. Or they somewhere like not even bothered because I didn't know I said that to you. They don't even, sometimes people can hurt you and people can bother you. They don't even know they did it. You know they did it because you felt it, you experienced it, but they don't even know. Or maybe they do know, but of course they're not you. So they don't know the extent of what you feel because of what they did. And hurt people, hurt people, hurt people, hurt people. Sick people can make other people sick. So you have to be able to know how to navigate and to show grace in these situations. And God is God, the God of wisdom. He's the God of love. He's right there. The God who is love, right? He's right there. He's right there knocking at your door, trying to get your attention. He's saying to you, in fact, he's saying to you today, let it go. That's what I had to do. I had to let it go. I couldn't keep living in yesterday. You see, that's what happens when people have victim mentalities. They live in yesterday. They don't live in today. They live in yesterday. How am I supposed to live out the purpose, live out the assignments, the destiny, be the best person, the best mother, the best child of God, the best whatever God has called me to be, the best wife? How can I do that if I'm living in yesterday? I'm not even up to speed with everything and everybody because I'm too busy worrying about what happened to me back then. So it's a terrible thing to carry that mentality, that weight, that spirit. It is very debilitating and it just strips from you what God intends to give you, which is a better life. You can't have that if you're living in yesterday. You got to be you got to live in today in order to reap the greatness that God has for you. And if you have that victim mentality, you can't do that. You're not going to be able to do that because it's not going to allow you to do that. And the foundation, the thing that really fuels that spirit and keeps people from being able to really come out and be free, the main thing that does that is unforgiveness. Because you're just constantly telling yourself, like I said, of what has happened to you, what somebody has done to you. So you've got to come to a place where you say, you know what? I can't change yesterday, but I'm sure tired of living there. And I'm not gonna keep living in that. I'm not gonna live in yesterday anymore. I'm gonna let that baggage and those problems and those issues and that disappointment, I'm gonna let that stuff go because it's not worth it. I'm gonna forgive and I'm gonna move on. Notice I didn't say forget because while you may be able to forgive, you may not be able to forget all those things. But just because you can't forget everything that maybe people have said or done or whatever the case may be, whatever it is, just because you can't forget it doesn't mean you can't move on. It doesn't mean your life is tarnished. It doesn't mean you have to remain a victim. The only reason why you can remember it is because that's how you're built. That's how you're built. But by the grace of God, by the mercies of God, by his power, you will be able to move on. And although you have a wound, God can heal it so that it just becomes a scar. And over time, if you've ever had any type of a scar, that's my Bible. If you've ever had any type of a scar, you know that as those things get older, like say for instance, if you had a wound on your sore whatever on your leg as a little kid, it got healed, it healed, right? And it turned into a scar. But over the years, it gets smaller, it diminishes, right? So in life, in the spirit, it's the same thing. Those that wound, if you allow God to heal the wound, a scar would remain. A scar will remain there. But over time, that thing just starts to disappear and disappear, 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 disappear. And by the time you get to a scar, you no longer feel that pain. You only feel pain when you have a wound because wounds are fresh. They're cuts, they're lacerations, they're open. It's open flesh, so blood can come out and other things if it's infected, right? But once it heals, the scar starts to form, the scar tissue, the scab, and these things start to form on top of it. And after a while, once it's healed, it becomes a scar, but you don't feel the pain anymore. And that's what happens, brothers and sisters. That's what happens, my friend, when you say, God, take this away from me. I don't want this anymore. I don't want to live my life like this because it's nothing but bondage. It's just taking away from me. It's not adding anything to me. It's not helping me. I don't want to live in yesterday. I want to live in today. You start by forgiving. You start by making the decision. Yes, I'm going to forgive them. I don't like it. I don't like what was said. I don't like what was said, but I'm going to forgive them. That's where you start. That's your starting point, right? And because you start at with the unforgiveness, because you deal with it. Of course, you have to ask God to help you with that, right? You ask God to help you with that unforgiveness. And when you ask God to help you with that, He begins the process of healing you. And I'm not going to tell you that there's nothing for you to do. I'm not here to tell you that today. I'm not going to tell you you won't have to fast. I'm not going to tell you that you're not going to have to pray. No, I'm pretty sure you may have to do that, depending on the severity of that wound, depending on how deep that that victimization is that you carry, that level that you carry of that mentality. the type of victim you've been. You may have to go through fasting. You may have to go through a lot more prayer. You understand what I'm saying? But if you want God to set you free, he'll do it if you partner with him. Now, for some people, it may not take fasting to do it because it may not have been something you carried for a long time. I'm speaking of mentality, the victim mentality when it's been carried for a number of years. Of course, if you've carried it for a number of years, it may require some fasting with prayer, right? For that thing to completely be removed. But if it's not something, if it's something that's just fairly new, you know what I mean? It's not even been a few months or maybe not even a year. That's something totally different. The level at which you need to forgive is going to be different probably from person to person. But that's where it starts. It starts with just forgiving. Unforgiveness is a very heavy thing to carry. It's very damaging. So you start there. Lord, I forgive them. I forgive them. Help me to keep moving forward. Because if you don't, those are some powerful words to use with God. If you don't, it won't be done. If you don't, it won't be done. So you're coming to God, you're humbling yourself, you're asking him to help you, and of course, he's not going to turn away and say no. Because that's his desire, is for you to forgive people. Now, I just want to share this scripture with you. It is Ephesians, and it's chapter 4, and it's verse 31 and 32. You're probably familiar. It says, let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. And be ye kind one to another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, has forgiven you. So that's why if you are coming to God and you are asking him to help you to live through that place of forgiveness, to help you to get through that, he's going to do it. Because right there in his word, is he's telling you how important that is to him that you do that, right? Because he has forgiven you. He wants you to forgive other people. Pride plays a part in the victim mentality too. And I'm going to tell you why. Pride is an ugly word. Nobody wants to own up to that, right? Literally. But the reason why pride has a role to play in a person having a victim mentality is because you get so caught up in what others have done to you that you can literally forget that you have probably done things too, even to the people that you're upset with. So that's another reason why it's very dangerous to have that mentality. But I am so grateful today that the Lord has set me free from it. I continue to grow in wisdom by the grace of God. And because of that, I'm also growing in love. Not just for the Lord, not just for myself, but other people. And that's important. So forgiveness is one of the keys to being healed from a victim mentality. And if you come to a place where you keep that mentality for a long time, over the years, this is what I've seen happen to people, is they will begin to use that victim mentality as a crutch. It becomes a crutch. I can't do this, or excuse me, I can't do that. And why can't you do it? Oh, because of what somebody did to me. Really? Yes, because they didn't do this right, or they didn't do that right. In other words, how you feel about what has been said or what has been done to you. Now it's my crutch in life. It's your excuse, in other words, as to why you can't do more. So you see, do you understand now why it's dangerous to have a victim mentality? Why it's good? It's important, it's vital for you to forgive people and to move on. And only God can heal, deliver, and set you free from that mentality. You have to ask him to help you with that. I encourage you today, if you have that type of mentality where you see yourself as a victim, where the enemy is always reminding you of what somebody else has said or what somebody else has done, listen, get on top of that thing. Don't spend another day allowing yourself to live like that because it's very dangerous. It will arrest you. It will put you in jail and throw away the key. It'll keep you from doing the things that God has called you to. It will keep you from having a healthy soul. Your mind, your will, and your emotions will just be all over the place. Because I remember, what it was like for me when I used to have that mentality, that victim mentality. Like I was a mess. Like it didn't take much for me to cry. If I got into like an argument with my husband, next thing you know, I'd be boohooing and crying. And he'd be looking at me like, what? Like, I mean, anybody, not just him. I was an emotional wreck. That's another thing about people that have that mentality. They're an emotional wreck. They can't trust their own decision-making processes. They're generally somewhat impulsive. They don't do things right. They don't, they can't think straight. And it's always somebody else's fault. They generally don't have accountability, you know. They don't step up to the plate and say, well, I can do this better. No, I can't do it better. Why can't you do it better? Oh, because because they didn't treat me right. Oh, I can't, I can't because, this happened to me. They feel sorry for themselves. Don't let that be you. And if some of the things that I've mentioned here, if you can relate, get in the Father's presence and start praying and start speaking, start communicating to him about how you want to come out. Because if you're watching this, it's not by happenstance. You're probably dealing with it, or you know somebody who is. So I just want to encourage you today. Do not allow yourself to walk around carrying this victim mentality, you know, just not forgiving other people for whatever they've done and thinking that your life is, this is the best I can do because of what happened to me. You are not what has happened to you. You are not what someone has said to you. You are not what happened to you 20 years ago. You are not what happened to you 5 years ago, or even 2 weeks ago for that matter. You are who God says you are. You can do what God says you can do. And if you feel limited, it may be only because you're doing it to yourself. And I also want to say this about the spirit of offense, because that victim mentality, usually it couples up with the spirit of offense. And I've seen what the spirit of offense looks like in the spirit realm. Ugly. I was praying with a family member a few years ago, and she had it really bad because I'm sitting there and I'm praying with her, and I could see a wall in front of her. Yes, I could see a wall in front. She was literally in the spirit, she had built up this wall where she wouldn't let anybody get through. That's how offended she was. It's like, no, I don't want nobody saying certain things to me, and no, and that's dangerous because to this day she still isn't free. And once again, pride. Sometimes people think that they think they know everything there is to know about pride, but let me tell you something, it's probably one of the sneakiest spirits. Uh, Pride. I don't think there's anybody, I've never heard anybody say that they were that they were the authority on teaching on pride. I've never heard anybody say that because it's very sneaky. Even when you think you are doing well in that area, you probably are not. But that's for another teaching. But hey, pride. We just talked about unforgiveness, and it's one of the keys to coming out is to forgive, right? Maybe I should say it that way. One of the keys to coming out of that victim mentality is to forgive. Forgiveness is the key, not unforgiveness. Unforgiveness is the problem. Forgiveness is the key to coming out. Okay. So releasing yourself from pride would be key number two. As it relates to that victim mentality, it's couples with that spirit of offense. Offense is when you are easily moved by the actions of others. People say something and because you didn't agree with you, you're bothered by it and their actions, their words, and now it's like, oh, I can't believe they said that. Think about that for me. Doesn't that make sense? That a spirit of offense would be coupled up with that spirit of that victim mentality? Of course, they love each other, just like how wisdom loves prudence. The Bible says in chapter 8 of the book of Proverbs that you can't have wisdom and not have prudence. Wisdom is the application of knowledge, and prudence basically tells you, is a guide to knowing the difference between when something is good and when it's wrong, and knowing how to navigate through that, right? So it makes sense that prudence and wisdom would go together. Okay, so it makes sense that if you have a victim mentality, you would be easily offended. How do you think you ended up growing in that mentality, that victim mentality? Because you were offended by something somebody said. You were offended by something they did, and it just continued to grow. And so you got this victim mentality, and hiding somewhere in the trenches is the spirit of offense. Oh, no, they didn't say that to me. Easily offended. That's the person with the victim mentality. Doesn't take much to say. That's why I was saying that I would cry very easily. I would get upset very easily. Didn't take much because I was easily offended because I had a victim mentality. And those two things love each other. You had a victim mentality, you're easily offended too. They go together. You're a wise person, you're also prudent. Those are two good things. The other two, obviously, they're bad. So, yeah. Just like wisdom and prudence love each other, victim mentalities, spirit of offense, love each other. Easily offended. Dangerous. The only way you're going to be healed, delivered, and set free from that is to seek the Lord. Partner with Him to get free from it. I don't know how long you've been living with it, either of those, because you really can't have that victim mentality without being easily offended. They go together. So if you have that, you have the other. You need to be healed, delivered, and set free. That's the bottom line. And if you're not willing to partner with the Lord, it's not going to happen. I want to say this to you. Just like how you need forgiveness, whoever has harmed you, whoever has hurt you, whoever has offended you, whoever has victimized you, they need the same thing. Now, if you're watching this and you can say, I've never done anything wrong, I've never offended anybody, I've never said something I shouldn't have said, I've never caused any harm to maybe you're Jesus. Maybe you think you are. Well, I hate to tell you this. There's only one Jesus. He's perfect. You're not. You have people that have said things and done things to you. Congratulations. You're not by yourself. The person who had never committed sin died on the cross for you. He went to hell so you don't have to. He would never have had to do that if there were people on the earth who had never sinned. Everybody falls short of the glory of God. Everybody needs mercy. Everybody needs forgiveness from God. Just like how you need it. As it states right here in Ephesians 4:31 and 32. 32 says, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, has forgiven you. Forgive. Forgive them. I'm not telling you it's going to be easy. I'm just telling you that that's what it's going to take to set you free from that victim mentality that spirit and that spirit of offense. They run together. If you want to be free, seek the Lord. Forgive. And just like how he did it for me, he'll do it for you. Be blessed. I hope this has helped. I really do. I'll see you next time.